Magnus know that this would be one of the craziest games he had played in a long time. And so the game begins. Magnus Carlsen, the world #1, against an international master, a Norwegian champion from almost 20 years ago. Magnus, the big favourite, of course, in this game. He gets the white pieces, and he starts with the English opening. Pawn to c4, his opponent copies. He pushes his pawn forward, total symmetry for now. This tends to lead to a blocked structure or a slower game, which very much would suit Magnus's style. Magnus decides to push a pawn forward. He fianchettos his bishop onto the long diagonal. This bishop is a fearsome piece in many middle games and even deep into the endgame. Elsnes replies with a pawn break. He strikes out in the center. We see a quick trade, and now Magnus plays the first surprising move of the game. Rather than just develop his pieces, for example, bringing his knight out, he instead challenges the center, blowing open the position, and now, breaking all the rules of openings, he brings out his queen early. Don't try this at home, ladies and gentlemen. This is a high-risk strategy. The queen is the most valuable piece. Anytime she develops early, she will get kicked around the board, and that's exactly what happens next. Black brings out the bishop to defend the knight in the center. Magnus does start to develop his pieces, and here we go. The queen slides to the left. She gets kicked again here, and now she has to slide the whole way to the other side of the board. Elsnes brings his bishop forward. He gets out of the way of the pawn in the center, and now the first real dilemma for Magnus Carlsen, to trade or not to trade. There's awkward tension between the queens. If the queens come off, it looks very symmetrical, very even, very drawish, and that is not a good result. So Magnus decides to block. He brings his bishop forward, hitting the black queen, and now tempo play. He brings his rook across, not giving black time to breathe. He attacks the black queen. That rook is hitting the queen there with a check. The queen therefore jumps out the way, and Magnus retreats. Now, a huge decision for Frode Elsnes. Does he just continue developing? Does he just slide his queen across one square to a very safe post in order to get out of the way of his bishop to just continue developing? That would have been wise. That would have led to a level-looking middle game. But he decides to take a big risk. He sees glory in his eyes, and he pushes forward, trying to trap the white queen. Magnus, he had seen this position in advance. He knew there weren't so many safe squares for this queen, so he was committed. He had to go for it. A piece sacrifice. Not Magnus's typical style, but it suited the needs of the position. Knight takes pawn. This turns the position into a 3-result game. Suddenly anything possible. A pure knight for 2-pawn sacrifice here, and it is to gain time against the black queen. A small mistake now from Frode Elsnes. A queen is one of the best defenders for a king, a knight being the other best defender. He brings the queen the wrong way though. He should be sliding it one square across. Instead, he offers the queen trade. Stubborn, consistent, but wrong. Magnus now dodges this queen trade with a very clever move. After the bishop recaptures in the center, we see a Zwischenzug, not an automatic retake of the bishop. That would lead to a queen trade, and Magnus would be down material. Instead, he finds this one, a tickle of the black queen, forcing the black queen to move. If it does, for example, capture a pawn, then Magnus's knight, the pin is broken on it, and it would be able to leap into the center, threatening some nasty checks. We see something similar happen in the game a bit later. Instead, Frode Elsnes tries to retreat, keeping his queen in touch with the white king, forcing Magnus to take back in the center with his queen instead. And now, a big blunder. Frode Elsnes brings his bishop forward. He should have been maybe improving his rook instead. Now, Magnus with a golden opportunity. Will he, sir? Is no. The bar crashes down. Magnus not spotting the winning continuation. Instead, he could have taken this black bishop off the board, and black now is left with a choice of 2 evils. If he takes with the king, the white queen slides across, it is a check. The king now will be forced into no man's land. For example, if it slides, the white rook can now join the party, join the attack, with some devastating checks threatened by the rook or the queen. The king now will not survive much longer. Instead, if black would have taken with the knight, this is perhaps what Magnus had missed or misevaluated here. He could have pushed his pawn forward, breaking the pin, breaking the tension, and after queen takes pawn, for example, the knight can leap again, hitting the queen, and next move, jumping in with a devastating fork. Many winning moves there. Maybe another knight check, also possible, but this would have ended all resistance. Instead, Magnus, missing the opportunity, brought his bishop further forward. This is very logical. He stops black from castling. The black king cannot castle to the right here. The rook also cutting off the black king's ability to castle to the other flank, at least for now. Here, Frode Elsnes, with his final opportunity to stay in the game, he plays a move and never really gets a look back in. He should have been sliding his queen more central to try and trade off queens again. The key for black is to try and get the queen back to the defense on this square. That was the vital maneuver, but very, very difficult. Only computers really would be capable of finding it. Instead, the knight retreats, allowing Magnus to castle. Black does the same. Opposite side castling, though, leads to mutual attacks, and Magnus now seized the initiative by dropping his knight into the center. He still only has 2 pawns for the sacrifice piece, but more than enough compensation elsewhere. The final blunder now from Elsnes, feeling the pressure. He should have been centralizing his rook, defending his bishop preemptively. Instead, he slides his king to the corner, a natural move, but this walks into a deadly pin. Knight takes bishop, a recapture, and now the simple slide back of the white bishop. The knight now, the rook now, both in the eye line of that piece. Something is going to drop, something is going to fall, and Magnus now pinning and winning, showing the pin is mightier than the sword. He backs up that one with his queen, a double attack hitting the knight, and there's simply nothing left to do for black. If he tries to defend the knight with his queen, then Magnus would have pushed his pawn forward, breaking the connection between queen and knight. No way to dodge the material loss here. Instead, seeing the inevitable, Frode Elsnes moves his knight out of the way, and Magnus coolly, calmly resists temptation to grab the rook. First, he just pushes a pawn forward, preventing black's knight from landing in the center of the board, and we see that the rook cannot move anyway, since then the knight would be vulnerable. The knight drops back, bishop takes rook, the knight recapture. If we do a quick count, Magnus here has a rook and 2 pawns in return for black's 2 knights. That is a small material advantage and something that only grows over the next few moves. He brings his queen forward, every move coming with a threat, every move gaining time. He hits the rook moves, white's rook posts up on a beautiful square, active, and the whole idea now is to double up. The 2 rooks gain in power now together. The knight improves itself, the rooks only continue adding pressure, and eventually that pressure tells. Here, black could perhaps have waited with the king, could have perhaps just made a passive move to survive a little bit longer, but realizing the hopelessness of the situation, he brings his knight forward, dropping yet another pawn. This knight now, lacking squares, is cornered, a terrible square for any piece, and Magnus just gets things going by coordinating now. The queen and rook teaming up, and the final touches, pushing pawns. We saw the offer of a rook trade now, and after rook takes rook, Frode Elsnes didn't want to wait for white to gobble up yet another pawn, to go 4 pawns up. It was time to resign. We see the handshake. Magnus Carlsen takes a win in a crazy game.